Israel and Hamas have reached an agreement for the release of Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners. This was a long-awaited breakthrough that could point towards an end to this 2-year-old war in Gaza.
President Trump, you have the best crowd in the world. What do you guys have to say to President Trump?
US President Donald Trump, who helped broker the deal, said that both sides had agreed to the first phase of his plan, which included that Israel would pull back its troops to an agreed-upon line.
The hostages will come back. They're all coming back on Monday.
In fact, Trump made this announcement in pretty dramatic fashion in the middle of a live press conference after Secretary of State Marco Rubio whispered something into the president's ear and passed him a sheet of paper.
I was just given a note by the Secretary of State saying that we're very close to a deal in the Middle East, and they're going to need me pretty quickly, so I will take a couple of more questions.
The specifics of the hostages for prisoner exchange and the line of Israeli withdrawal, both of those were unclear, but Israel welcomed the deal and also said it was eagerly looking forward to hosting President Trump in their country later this week. Trump's announcement came shortly before 7 o'clock Eastern Time. That was almost 2 a.m. Thursday in Israel. It was something that was unequivocally welcomed by Prime Minister Netanyahu and his entire government. Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey were the countries that helped mediate this. Qatar, in fact, was one of the lead negotiators. And Hamas, the party that was involved in these negotiations, one of the two parties, the other being Israel, all indications were that the agreement would also allow, once the prisoner for hostage exchange happens, then there would be the entry of humanitarian aid into Gaza. Trump also went up on Truth Social and he announced that this is a great day for the Arab and Muslim world, that Israel and its surrounding nations, along with the United States of America, and he thanked the mediators from Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey who worked with America to make this what he called a historic and unprecedented event happen. Back in late September, in the presence of Prime Minister Netanyahu in the White House, Donald Trump unveiled a sweeping 20-point plan to end the Gaza war and free the remaining hostages. Under that proposal, the hostages would be exchanged for 250 Palestinian prisoners, all of whom were serving life sentences in Israeli jails, as well as 1,700 Gazans who had been jailed by Israel during these last 2 years of the war. Later, the president met with the hostages' families in the White House. He promised to bring them back home by Monday. Trump is also likely to travel to Israel very soon, as early as this weekend. The Israeli government has welcomed the completion of the first phase of the Trump peace plan. The big sticking point in Israel has always been about the return of all the hostages, both those who are alive and the ones who are dead. That final sticking point was resolved when Hamas finally agreed to give up the only leverage it had and release all the hostages, both those alive and those dead. All the living hostages, who are believed to be about 20, are expected to be released all at once. It could likely happen either Sunday or Monday. And the remains of up to 25 dead hostages will be returned in various stages because it could take longer to locate some of these dead bodies. Even though Israel and Hamas have now agreed to exchange the last hostages for the prisoners, it is still not clear whether this will actually end the war. But the big point of contention in Israel, and something that has been domestically a big issue for the Netanyahu government to deal with, is the return of all the hostages, particularly the ones who are alive. Netanyahu has demanded that Hamas disarms itself and also does not take part in any future governance structure in Gaza, both of which the terror group has publicly rejected. Netanyahu also said that he spoke with President Trump and that he would convene his government. In fact, the cabinet meeting happened Thursday to sign off on an agreement calling it a great day for Israel. Hamas in its statement has called on Trump, as well as the guarantors to the agreement, including Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey, to compel Israel to fully implement the agreement's requirements and not allow Israel to either evade or delay any of the conditions. Palestinians in Gaza received the news with great hope that it might finally bring their nightmare of the last 2 years, finally bring that to an end. Everyone was awake at 2 o'clock in the morning, glued to the news, waiting to hear when the truce might actually come into effect. Negotiations have been taking place in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, where the Trump administration's Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff, along with Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner, joined in the dialogue. Ron Dermer, who's an advisor to Netanyahu, as well as Qatar's Prime Minister, were all present in Sharm el-Sheikh. Last week, Trump warned Hamas that many more of its fighters would be killed if the group did not agree to a deal by Sunday evening. Hamas then said it would agree to releasing all of the hostages who are held in Gaza, both living and dead, but it wanted to negotiate other elements of the plan. That evening, Trump said that he believed Hamas was ready for a lasting peace. He called on Israel to stop bombing Gaza. In fact, Israel's September 9th strike targeting Hamas leadership and Hamas representatives in Qatar, right in the heart of Doha, that is the one that seems to have tipped over. It rankled government officials in Washington. It motivated a very angry Trump to pressurize Netanyahu into supporting his 20-point peace plan to end the war. In fact, he made it a point to get Netanyahu on the phone to apologize to the leader of Qatar when Netanyahu went to the White House in the last week of September. The war in Gaza began on the 7th of October 2023 after the Hamas-led attack on Israel, in which roughly 1,200 people were killed and more than 250 taken hostage. Since then, the Israeli military response has killed more than 65,000 Palestinians, including both civilians and combatants, according to data by the Gaza Health Ministry.
Been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.